evening, my holy sisters and brothers. Good Yom Tif. That's what we say on the festival. Pesach, Passover, has ended, but we're carrying that energy of Passover out with us. During Passover, we said Hallel every day. That melody comes from the Hallel, from Psalm 118. You are my God, and I will thank you. You are my God, and I will exalt you. That melody, sung beautifully by Tuvia Bolton, is a Chabad melody. It's actually the nigun of the Alter Rebbe, the founder of Chabad Hasidus. And I just came from a Sudas Moshiach. It started hours ago, and we were sharing Torah and singing with this incredible energy. Sudas Mashiach is a meal for Mashiach, a meal for the Messiah. And if you went to Tony's birthday party, well, Tony would be at his birthday party. So if you go to a meal for Mashiach, so Mashiach would be there. What is Mashiach? I heard such beautiful teachings tonight. Rabbi Wolf, Rabbi Reuben Wolf, my rabbi, such an important rabbi in my life, and his son-in-law, Rabbi Mendel Zirkin, they both shared such powerful teachings. Rabbi Wolf's son-in-law, he said, this society that we live in, what is it all about? What are we told that it's all about? It's about self-appreciation, self-realization, self-actualization, knowing yourself, understanding yourself, loving yourself. When you're so full of yourself, what's there no room for? Anybody. There's no room for anybody, right? As Rabbi Mendel showed, what he was saying, you take... he's very philosophical. He says, it's an article of faith in modern philosophy, phenomenology. That two things. We're not really sure what things are, but we're pretty sure that two things that are solid, they can't occupy the same space. All right. So this thing and this thing are separate because they can't occupy the same space. They're going to bump each other out. When we're so focused on making a space for ourself, for our ego, which of course during Passover represented by chametz, the leavened bread, so then there's no room for other people, there's no room for other entities, and especially and most importantly, there's no room for Hashem, there's no room for God in our lives when we're all about ourselves. Right? So matzah, and that's what we ate at this Sudas Mashiach, this meal. It's a Hasidic practice. It's not only Hasidic, but it's especially Hasidic. It was implemented by the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of Hasidus. And this idea that at the end of Passover, on the 8th day, and 7 represents nature, and 8 is beyond nature. 8 represents infinity. So this 8th day of Passover, it's that other world. We have a chance to connect with our higher selves, with the upper world. And what we want to be is mebatel. We want to be nullified. We want to nullify ourselves. We want to just give it up, give up all our needs, our wants, our desires, our this, our that, our mishugas, our craziness, and just make a space for God in our lives. And the more we do that, and the more we understand the beauty, the love, the energy of that, because when you make space for God in your life, it's not that you rule yourself out and you say, oh, I'm so small, I'm nothing. What you're saying is, I'm a soul, right? We don't have souls. We are souls. I am a soul. So what is a soul? A soul is made of light. What light? The light of the Ein Sof, the light of the infinite. Every one of us is an expression, a very particular, beautiful expression of the infinite. And Rabbi Wolf took us back to this moment before the universe existed. when there was only God. And the Eibishter, as they say in the Hasidic world, the Holy One, made a decision. He made a decision. The God who was just alone and perfect, endless light. That's what the Or Ein Sof is. Before there was a universe, there was the endless light of the Infinite One. And at some point, the Infinite One made a decision to create us, to create a world that contained us. Okay, so this universe is a vehicle for beings that the Holy One would love and care for and nurture and create. Right? So he made a decision to create us. Why? Right? So in that very moment that he made the decision to create us, we had existence. We had existence immediately. In this, the very moment that he had a desire for us, there was some aspect of us which came into existence at that moment. Why? Love. He had a love for us. He had a desire to not be alone and to include in his world us, these beings. We're all expressions of him, but he would give us an independent existence, and he would long for us, and he would long that we would long for him. So what is Moshiach? What is the Messiah? So the Messiah is like a turning point. It's like a trigger. It's like that moment. It's gonna be a person. But really that person is going to come at the moment when we're all ready to connect with our source. And we can bring that moment closer by connecting with our source, by making a space where we are right now for the Creator. And understanding, right, that when we nullify ourselves so that we can make a space for God, we're not lessened by that. I'm not telling you to, be small, you're such a puny, insignificant person. No, you are an expression. You are light, and you are an expression of the infinite light. And when you remember that, when you recognize who you really are, you join, you bond with the Infinite One. And then we enter that age, right? And so the more this knowledge of God fills the world, the closer we come to what we read in synagogue today, one of the most beautiful passages in the entire Bible, and we read it on the 8th day of Passover. It's such famous words, right, from the prophet Isaiah. And on that day, the day of the Moshiach, when that world is completely transformed and the lion will lie down with the lamb, what will happen on that day? The world, all of us, will be as filled with knowledge of the Holy One as the seabed is filled with water, right? When we all have this knowledge, not some intellectual idea, but when we experience, when we feel that we are light and that we are part of his light, then we'll be in the Messianic age. Then we'll be there, right? And the Mashiach will show up to kind of like just take it over the top. But we can get there ourselves. And every time we help somebody make space in their life for God, then we're getting there. I'm sorry, what? Ah, my candle, thank you. We are light. Let's light up the darkness. Oh, we got it. It's a joy, my pals. It's a joy. It's an absolute joy. And that is where we are all headed. That's what today, the 8th day of Passover, was all about. And we want to pull that energy from the 8th day, from the day of infinity, from the day beyond nature, the day of rejoining our source. We want to pull that energy with us out of Passover. And as we count the Omer, right? And what day did we count tonight? Right? Yes, I already counted. So this is the 8th day of the Omer. The Omer begins on the 2nd day of Passover. So right now we're in the 8th day of the counting of the Omer, where we count from bringing the Omer offering on the 2nd day of Passover. We count 50 days until Shavuos, which celebrates the revelation when Torah was given to the world. We're counting those days. This is the 8th day. We're in it right now, the 8th day, the number 8. It's an odd coincidence, actually. They didn't turn that number 8 over and call it the infinity symbol. They came from different places, but there's no real accidents in this world. 8 represents infinity. This is a day we want to pull this energy with us as we leave Passover. I'll read the roll call in 1 second. So as we get into our daf today, I really want us to think about, is our page of Talmud today specifically related to the 8th day of Passover and bringing that light of the infinite with us as we leave Passover? No, but there are no accidents. So there's an amazing, embedded teaching, and that this particular coincidence, which can never happen before and probably never happen again, right? That we're reading Shekalim 12, page Yud, Daf Yud Beis, right? Page 12 here in Tractate Shekalim, the 5th volume of the Talmud, which is about the finances of the Holy Temple. But we'll see how today's teaching in the Talmud intersects with this incredible energy that we're pulling from Passover. And I really like us, I'm challenging you, my pals. What I'd like to see is every time we meet together every day to learn, let's see what takeaways we can take, right? Not just questions and comments, which are always amazing. I'm really in love with all of you and the questions and comments that you bring. But I really want you to think, what is the takeaway every day, right? Every day we should have a takeaway. And so I want suggestions each day for what is the takeaway? What is that energy? What is that teaching? What is that truth? What is that spark of light that we want to take away from our Torah learning that day? All right, who's with us tonight as we get it going, coming out of Passover? Pauline in Arkansas, Carolyn in Raleigh, Ann in Merced, Crystal says Shavua Tov, Christo in Lubbock, William in New York, Paula is here, Bella in Florida, Ryan in Jacksonville, Larry in Queens, Miriam in Colorado, Mani in Monaco. Wow, welcome, Mani. That's a new one. Ryan loves the spirit of the soul, Ruach of Neshama, Melissa in Great Neck, Zinaida in Ukraine. Beautiful, Zinaida. We were talking about Ukraine tonight and whether it will be possible, and I hope it will, to go to Uman for Rosh Hashanah this year in Ukraine. Keith in South Africa. Good to see you, Keith, as always. Maciel says Shalom. Donatella in Italy. Donna in York Beach, Maine, Meg Dome in Pennsylvania, Colette in West Virginia, Jody is here, Karen in Prescott, Arizona, over there on the YouTube side, Gwen wishing us a good night from Michigan, and Gigi in British Columbia. Welcome, everybody. All right, a lot of energy. Where are we holding? So like I said, page Yud Beis, page 12 here in Tractate Shekalim. Generally speaking, about the finances of the temple. Here we are in chapter 4, and we've been talking about generally in this chapter what happens to sacrifices that are left over, money that is left over from the collection, consecrated money, right? Donations that are made to the temple but that are left over, or animals that are consecrated to be brought as offerings when the temple is standing. Hasn't been in 2,000 years, but we're going to be ready when Moshiach comes and the third temple goes up that day. Okay, so here we're doing the 4th Mishnah here in chapter 4. And let's see if we can make a connection to the energy of this day. One who consecrates all his possessions without specifying for what purpose, his possessions are consecrated for the maintenance of the temple. Right? We saw that in terms of the money that's collected every year when the temple is standing, the silver half shekel that is required, obligated to be given by every adult Jewish male. And that collection of money, its first purpose is to pay for the offerings, the communal offerings, the offerings of the nation that are brought every day, 2 offerings morning and afternoon, and the additional offerings of Shabbos and festivals. And then what's left over from that, generally speaking, maintenance of the temple. So now we have this case of a person who says, I give everything to the temple, all right? I give everything to God, essentially, but, through this vehicle of the temple and the offerings that are given there, I just give everything to the temple. So what has he given? What is all his money to use for? It can't necessarily be dedicated just for offerings, and since he sort of gave it all for one purpose, so the first ruling is, Okay, so he gives everything to the temple, so it's going to be used for the maintenance of the temple. They are given, and how is that going to be done? He gives all his possessions, right? He consecrates all his possessions to the temple. So they are given to temple artisans, the people who do the work of the temple, who create for the temple, either grinding the incense or building the walls of the temple, etc. So this money that this person consecrates to the temple is given to those artisans who work in the temple as their wages. And thereby, they are deconsecrated. This is the statement of Rabbi Akiva. Remember that when you exchange something that's consecrated, like money given to the temple, and then you use it to buy something for the temple, well, the thing that's purchased for the temple becomes holy, and then the money that goes out becomes deconsecrated. You need that, right? So that you can buy things from people for the temple. What gets bought for the temple, okay, that's consecrated, and then the money that flows out to pay for those things is deconsecrated, and that's good because that means that the artisan who did the work or the vendor who's selling things to the temple can now use that money to pay for his food and his rent, etc. Otherwise, if it remained consecrated, it could only be used for the needs of the temple. This is the statement of Rabbi Akiva. Ben Azai said to him, "This is not the method to be used. Rather, the same method that is used to deconsecrate the leftover incense at the end of the year when there's incense that wasn't used to go up on the incense altar, as is described in the previous Mishnah, should also be used here." In other words, they set aside from the consecrated items, this person gave all his possessions to the temple, so they set aside from those consecrated items the equivalent of the value that is owed to the artisans for their wages, and they deconsecrate them by transferring their sanctity. This person consecrated all his possessions to the temple. They deconsecrate those possessions by converting them into money, which has been allocated for the wages of the artisans. And then now that these goods that he consecrated to the temple, now they've been exchanged for money for their value, now they're no longer consecrated, so they can be given to the artisans as their wages. The artisans would rather get paid in money, don't you think? Why are they getting stuff? Now they're getting stuff. But then what happens is and onto the money allocated for the artisans' wages, and then they give them those items, which are no longer consecrated, to the artisans as their wages. Now, according to both opinions, once the deconsecrated items are in the possession of the artisans, one of the temple treasurers should repurchase those items using money from that year's new collection of half shekels, and now that consecrates them for sacrificial use during the coming year. So now this person who gave everything he had to the temple, we've gone through a mechanism whereby first converting it into money, converting their value into money, and then giving those items to the artisans, and then the artisans sell those things back to the temple, and now those things that the guy originally donated to the temple can be used not just for the maintenance of the temple, but even for offerings offered up in the temple. This whole rigmarole enables this gift that went to the temple to be used for the communal offerings in the temple. In the case of one who consecrates all his possessions without specifying for what purpose, and among them there is an animal that is suitable to be sacrificed on the altar, male or female, what should be done with it? Rabbi Eliezer says, since he did not specify otherwise, everything is consecrated for temple maintenance. Therefore, any males should be sold. And he consecrated all his possessions to the temple, and among his possessions, there were young sheep or young goats who were suitable to be offered up on the altar. So can those animals be offered on the altar? That's the question we're answering right now. What should be done with it? So Rabbi Eliezer says, well, he didn't specify otherwise, so everything is consecrated for temple maintenance. Therefore, any males among those animals should be sold for the needs of burnt offerings, i.e., they can be sold to individuals who want to sacrifice them as such, because burnt offerings are always male animals. And any females, since they cannot be brought as burnt offerings, so they should be sold to individuals for their needs who want to bring peace offerings, which can be female animals. i.e. to the individuals who will sacrifice them as such. And their monetary value that is received from their sale is allocated with the rest of the property of this person who donated everything to the temple for temple maintenance. So this is a mechanism where somebody donated all his possessions. Some of his possessions were actually suitable to bring as offerings. Since they've already been dedicated to the upkeep of the temple, here's a mechanism where you can sell them to individuals who want to use animals to bring them as individual offerings. You sell them for that, and then the money that the temple receives for selling those animals to the people who want to bring individual offerings now goes back into the temple treasury. Rabbi Yehoshua says, although he did not specify for what purpose he consecrated his possessions, it may be assumed that he intended the animals to be consecrated as burnt offerings. Therefore, since he included animals in his possessions that were suitable to bring as burnt offerings, Rabbi Yehoshua says we should assume he wanted those animals among his possessions to be brought as burnt offerings. Therefore, any males should themselves be sacrificed as burnt offerings, and any females, since they cannot be brought as burnt offerings, should be sold. Should be sold for the needs of peace offerings, i.e., to individuals who will sacrifice them as such, and their monetary value that is received from their sale should be used to purchase and bring burnt offerings, not temple maintenance. According to both opinions, the rest of the possessions, which are not suitable for sacrificial use, are allocated for temple maintenance. Rabbi Akiva said, I see the statement of Rabbi Eliezer as more correct than the statement of Rabbi Yehoshua, since Rabbi Eliezer applied his method equally to both animals and other possessions, in treating both as consecrated for temple maintenance, whereas Rabbi Yehoshua made a distinction between them. Rabbi Papayas said, I heard the statements of both of them applied to different situations. One who consecrates all his possessions and explicitly states that his animals are to be included, well, he clearly intends to equate his animals with the rest of his possessions, that both should be consecrated for the same purpose, i.e. for temple maintenance. Therefore, he should act in accordance with the statement of Rabbi Eliezer. However, with regard to one who consecrates all his possessions without explicitly specifying that this includes his animals, since there is no reason to presume that he wishes them all to be consecrated for the same purpose, it is presumed that each item is consecrated for the purpose most suited to it. Therefore, he should act in accordance with the statement of Rabbi Yehoshua that among his possessions, the animals that are suitable to be brought as offerings should be brought as offerings, and the rest of his possessions, their value should be turned into a benefit for the temple upkeep. In the case of one who consecrates all his possessions, and among them there were items that are suitable to be sacrificed on the altar, such as wines for libations and oil for meal offerings and birds, for example, turtle doves and young pigeons. Rabbi Eliezer says they are sold for the needs of that kind of item, i.e., to the individuals who will use them as such, and he should bring with their monetary value that is received from their sale of burnt offerings. And the rest of the possessions are allocated for temple maintenance. That is the Mishnah. That is the Mishnah. Before I go on, all right, so basically they're going to argue about this case of somebody who consecrates all of his possessions to the temple. So let me just read to you where the law comes out on this. One who consecrates all his possessions, and among them there are items that are suitable to be sacrificed. Actually, I'm going to go back. Okay, one who consecrates all his possessions, and among them there are items suitable for communal offerings. What is the law? When someone consecrates all his possessions without specifying for what purpose, and incense or one of its ingredients is among them, these should be given to the temple artisans as their wages in a procedure like that performed with the leftover incense, like we learned yesterday. And if one who consecrates all his possessions, and among them there is an animal that is suitable to be sacrificed on the altar, if one consecrates all his possessions without specifying for what purpose, and among them there are unblemished animals suitable for sacrificing on the altar, they are to be sold. The males are sold for the needs of burnt offerings and then sacrificed as such, and the females are sold for the needs of peace offerings and then sacrificed as such. And the money received in the sale goes to the temple maintenance in accordance with the halacha that unspecified consecrated items are for temple maintenance. So that's as far as I'm going to go in terms of reading from the daf today. I'm curious now. It's going to be a short class. So now I'm curious about what you think the takeaway is. But what I'm getting from reading this, and I'm thinking aloud right now, but it seems to me, when you talk about the temple, right, any offering that's brought on the temple has a lot of laws that are associated with it. And then ultimately, it's brought on the altar, right? And when there's an offering brought on the altar, its lifeblood goes into a vessel, and that gets sprinkled on a certain part of the altar. And so you see that when you want to, give your all, you want to give to the world, you want to give to humanity, you want to give to God, that is a beautiful and laudable emotion. It's fantastic. That desire to give back, to show your gratitude, is absolutely beautiful. But sometimes we can imagine situations where, we have people around us and we know what's good for them better than they know what's good for them. And then we have this urge to kind of shove it down their throat, make them accept what we know is good for them, right? Or we just make our offering and they don't get it, and then we get resentful that they don't realize how much we want to give to them and how much we have their best interests in mind, and they don't get it. We know better than them, right? So I think a lesson here is when we want to give these gifts, right? When we want to, and we can give a gift to God by giving to humanity, by being there, by being of service to people. But our ego will step in, right? Our chametz, our puffed up ego, and tell us we know better than anyone else what the world needs, what people need, what my friend needs, what my family needs. I know better, right? And that's where we have to put the ego aside. And, learn from our ancestors, learn from the Torah, learn from these laws. And this beautiful urge to give and to bless others and to be there for others and to share information and every way that we want to give, we should find a vessel for that gift. Not just throw it at them, lay it on them, force it on them. Right? Rather, place that gift in a suitable vessel. Now, a vessel, it could be a bowl that receives a liquid, but a vessel can really be, it can be a mechanism, a system, a tradition in this world that has proven itself, that has been proven, that is part of the eternal values that we have inherited from our traditions, from our ancestors, and of course in the Jewish tradition specifically from the Torah that was given to our ancestors at Mount Sinai, and that teaches us how to make gifts to God and how to make gifts to our brethren on behalf, make a gift to God via our making a gift to the world and specifically our brethren. We look for a vessel that can contain that love that we want to give, a vessel that can contain that goodness that we want to bestow, right? And so then we're so much more likely to land properly and to give something that is accepted and that's going to do good. When we place that energy, that love that we want to give into a proper vessel, doesn't mean it's going to be accepted by the people we most wish would accept it. But since we're placing it in a vessel that makes sense, that has a history, that has a precedent of being a beautiful vessel to receive that energy, then even if the one we want to give it to doesn't get it right away, over time, there's a good chance that they will get it, right? And when we think about this, like people consecrate all their possessions. So one way that happens is, suddenly they wake up and they want to just give everything they own to the temple. It doesn't happen that often. But somebody who leaves this world, and by the time they're leaving this world, they've aged and learned and had a lot of experience, and they write up a will, and they bequeath their possessions, some to their family, and some to the causes that they believe in, right? So that's very similar to this idea of somebody who gives all of his possessions. And sometimes the way that they give their possessions, doesn't line up exactly. Maybe they wrote up their will many years before they actually died. And then the charity that they wanted to donate to is no longer still around. Things change, right? But I think we can learn from this page and these teachings that, first of all, we want to honor the gifts that people give. We want to absolutely capture the spirit with which they give their gift. But what we want to do is help them, right, find that suitable vessel where the energy that was intended can really get there, can get home, can bring what they, the spark in them wanted to send. That's, like there was the light in that person wanted to send the spark of their light to another place in this world. And we want to help them do that, right? And then every time we see somebody make a gift in this world and we're moved by it, when people make sacrifices, sometimes people give up their lives to save another person's. We should be moved by that, deeply moved and inspired. And then we want to make our own gifts, right? But we should think when we're making gifts, it's not about us. It's not about our ego. It's not about what we want to happen with that gift. It's about finding that suitable vessel for the energy that we want to give out, where it's really going to land in a way that is commensurate, that is consistent, right, with those eternal values that go all the way back, not only to when the Torah was given, although that's like the biggest landmark between us and that initial moment, but if you go all the way back to that very moment when God decided to create us. And why did he do that? It was love, right? It was a moment of tremendous, tremendous love and sacrifice, because when God decided to make us, it wasn't like we would just be his playthings to push around to keep him from being bored. God has let us know through the Torah that these creatures, us, that God created, for some reason, he's told us we have the power to please him and to anger him. So he's in relationship with us. And so every relationship we have with our families, with the people around us, is a reflection of the relationship we have with the Holy One. And may we be blessed to give him our gifts by taking care of his children and doing so in vessels that would please him. All right, let me check your comments and questions. Colette says, what are your thoughts on giving to those that are homeless and who don't search out employment and giving them food? I mean, I think that feeding the hungry is pretty much at the highest level. It's the highest level. Helping, but especially, giving to organizations and helping people one-on-one. First of all, they're hungry, you got to feed them. But if somehow we can help them get to a place where they can sustain themselves, that's even higher, right? So even better than giving a man a fish is to give him a fishing pole so that he can fish for himself. Obviously, there's a lot of mental illness that is associated with people who are homeless and who are having trouble feeding themselves and sheltering themselves. And so, part of finding that suitable vessel for bestowing this love and light on the most needy is understanding, what their limitations are, and helping them overcome that. Because, I think we've all read many stories of people who ended up homeless through a series of bad breaks, and, they're not crazy, or they can be healed from the emotional mental illnesses that they have. Sometimes they can't, but sometimes they can. Right? And getting that touch of love and caring. Sometimes it's not about money. Sometimes it's not even about food. Sometimes it's a hug, or a glance, or a hello, or a greeting, or that somebody takes an interest in them when they are most vulnerable. And this is a way, to bestow that light in a beautiful, and I would say God-approved vessel, as it were. Okay, so that's what I've got. I don't know if anybody else, let me see here. Meg says, I've known people who have given all their possessions to a temple under duress, or by belief that they're doing the right thing, or belief that it is out of sacrifice, only to later realize or claim that it was based on institutionalized spiritual abuse. Right. So listen, what temple was that? What religion was that? I mean, anybody who's pressuring you to give up all your possessions to some religion, first of all, that's not Jewish. Okay, that's definitely not Jewish. If somebody puts pressure like that on you in the name of some Jewish value, they're lying, right? Because we have it very clear in the Torah that while a person may choose to give as much as they want to give, we're only obligated to tithe, right? We should give 10% of our income to righteous causes. That makes Hashem our partner in whatever we're doing. But the other, 90% is for us to use and to enjoy in this world, right? We should enjoy our lives in this world. This world is not about suffering. There's enough suffering in the world that we have to deal with. And when Moshiach comes, we'll understand why all that suffering was here. But anybody who pressures you to give up all your possessions, that right away, that's out of bounds, out of order, no good. And Sharon says, we say daily that we seek to feed the hungry, clothe the naked, honor our father and mother, but that Torah study is equivalent to them all. Very good. So let's end with that. So why is Torah study so important? Why are we learning pages of the Talmud every day where sometimes they're so like picayune and so getting into the nitty gritty of the law, and it doesn't seem to be about like big, bold, loving teachings, and it's so much more about the minutia of the law. How could Torah study, when it's about minutia like that, how could that be the equivalent of feeding the hungry, sheltering the shelterless, sheltering the homeless, dowering the young bride and groom so they can start a home who otherwise couldn't start a home in a family? How could Torah study be equivalent to all those things? And the answer is, when we're looking for these vessels, right, to bestow our chesed, our loving energy. Today, it's the 8th day of the Omer, so there's a meditation every day. Tonight's is a chesed shebegavura, right? So the loving kindness of good judgment, right? So this week is all dedicated to showing good judgment and restraint and like figuring things out, looking before you leap, as it were. Tonight's meditation is about using our good judgment, to get into the process of loving kindness, right? To making loving kindness, to giving of ourselves. But we don't just give blindly. The meditation of today is exactly about finding an appropriate vessel for bestowing those energies. And when we study Torah, we sharpen our understanding, and we sharpen our understanding of eternal values. And we become so much more able to direct our loving kindness and our energies and our desire to give gifts, and even sharpen our ability to receive gifts appropriately. Torah study helps us understand what this world is all about. It originates in the moment that God decided to create us, and that moment is basically re-expressed in every moment that we continue to be alive. May we plug into the holy energy and the goodness and the love that God felt when he decided to create us, and may we channel that love as we give gifts to others in appropriate vessels. Have a great night, and with God's help, we'll be together again tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Pacific, the normal time. Take care.